"I can fix it," said the black boy to the stranded millionaire. At first, Richard Callahan laughed. How could an 11-year-old possibly repair an engine worth more than most houses? But just 5 minutes later, Elijah's small hands brought the luxury car back to life. When Richard reached for his wallet, the boy refused and simply warned, "This place isn't safe for you." Then he vanished into the crowd. That night, Richard couldn't shake those words. The next day, determined to find answers, he searched the streets until he saw Elijah again, not fixing cars, but standing helpless in a hospital ward at his sick mother's bedside. What Richard did next would change both of their lives forever. Late afternoon, the heat pressed hard against the empty boulevard, the asphalt shimmering in waves. Richard Callahan's black Mercedes-Benz S-Class coughed, jerked and died, leaving behind only the faint tick-tick-tick of cooling metal. He guided the car to the roadside, hazard lights blinking against a backdrop of cracked brick walls and graffiti. Adjusting his loosened tie, he called roadside service. 15 to 20 minutes, sir, they promised. He glanced at his watch, jaw tight with frustration. Time crawled. The sun dipped lower, the air heavy with dust and exhaust from passing cars. From a corner shop, a woman quietly wiped down a counter while watching him. Two teenagers leaned against a stoop, smirking as they whispered about the stranded man in his expensive suit beside the silent machine. An hour dragged by. Still no help. Richard's patience thinned. The heat pressed at his collar, his nerves prickling. He let out a sharp breath and stepped back from the car when a voice, calm and steady, came from his side. "I can fix it." Richard turned. A boy stood there, thin frame, no more than 11. His clothes were dusty and torn, sneakers worn at the heel, a stitched backpack hanging from one shoulder. His dark eyes, intelligent and steady, never wavered. Richard gave a short, dismissive laugh. "This is a complex engine," he said, waving a hand as if brushing off a childish suggestion. He turned back toward the road, willing his help to arrive. But the boy didn't move. His voice came again, firm, almost like a warning. "This place isn't safe for someone like you." For the first time, Richard felt uneasy. His pride clashed with reason. No repair truck had appeared. The street was emptying, shadows stretching across the walls. The boy's gaze stayed fixed on the car, calm and sure. Finally, Richard reached inside, pulled the latch, and with a dull clunk, the hood popped open. The boy set his backpack down carefully and leaned into the engine bay. His eyes moved across the machine like he was reading a familiar map. On one side stood wealth and helplessness, on the other, poverty and quiet confidence. He didn't rush. He studied, listened, and only then began. From his backpack, he pulled out a few modest tools, an old screwdriver, folded sandpaper, a worn toothbrush, and a small matchbox of spare fuses. Hardly enough for a Mercedes, yet he handled them with certainty. He pressed the battery clamp, tightened a loose ground wire, and replaced a weak fuse with one from his box. Every move was deliberate, careful, as if the smallest detail mattered. Richard stood back, arms crossed, pretending indifference, but his eyes gave him away. His world revolved around contracts and guarantees, yet here was a child with nothing but confidence in his hands. Minutes passed. The boy closed the hood gently, brushed dust from his fingers, and gave a single nod. Richard slid behind the wheel, turned the key, and froze. The engine roared back to life, smooth and steady, as though it had never faltered. A startled laugh broke from his lips. Relieved, he climbed out, pulling his wallet. "For your help," he said, holding out crisp bills. But the boy shook his head. "Don't worry," he replied simply, his tone final. He pointed toward the street. "You should go. This isn't a safe place for you." Then, without another word, he slung the patched backpack over his shoulder and melted into the crowd, leaving nothing behind but the sound of the car purring. Richard stood there, money still in his hand, watching the boy vanish. The Mercedes was alive again, yet inside him something felt unsettled. That night, the boy's image returned again and again, his steady hands, the calm voice, the refusal of money, the chilling warning. "This isn't a safe place for you." It echoed in Richard's mind like a riddle. He lay awake, restless. He couldn't leave it unfinished. Tomorrow, he decided, he would return. Morning light stretched across the city as Richard steered the Mercedes back toward those same streets. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down he knew it was something more. The boulevard stretched ahead, cracked asphalt underfoot, graffiti sprayed across crumbling brick, and power lines sagging low. Richard slowed by the same kiosk. The woman who had watched him the day before looked up, recognition flickering in her eyes. "The boy?" Richard asked, his voice steady. "Do you know him?" She hesitated, shared a quick glance with her neighbor, then shrugged. "Plenty of boys here. But I've seen him run toward the clinic." The word clinic lodged deep in Richard's chest. He thanked her and drove on. The clinic stood squat and gray, concrete walls flaking paint, a crooked sign swaying above the door. Inside, the air was heavy, disinfectant, sweat, exhaustion. Mothers clutched sick children on worn benches. A man coughed violently into his sleeve. Nurses in faded scrubs moved quickly among patients. Richard stood out immediately. Polished shoes. Tailored jacket. The way he carried himself. Heads turned, whispers hushed. What's a man like him doing here? And then he saw him. The boy, backpack hanging loose, torn clothes pulled into place. He moved with urgency too heavy for his age, eyes sharp yet burdened. He slipped through a half-open door. Richard followed, stopping at the frame. Inside lay a woman, her face pale against a thin pillow, oxygen tubing taped beneath her nose. Her breaths came shallow, the monitor beside her stuttering uneven beeps. The boy set his backpack at her feet, then took her hand in both of his, whispering words only she could hear. His eyes shone, but he held firm. He stayed strong for her. Richard leaned against the wall outside, chest tight. Fragments of gossip floated from nearby lips. That boy, he's been the one keeping her alive. Always running errands, always scraping together coins. People like him never get noticed. Moments later, the boy appeared at the nurse's desk, clutching a small wad of crumpled bills. He whispered urgently, sliding them forward. The nurse shook her head. Too little. Still, he pressed the money into her hand. "Please," he begged softly. "Anything. Just do what you can." Richard's throat tightened. Yesterday, this boy had repaired his luxury car without asking for a cent. Today, he was fighting with scraps to keep his mother alive. For the first time in years, Richard felt his wealth stripped of meaning. Money had bought him speed, convenience, silence. But here, in this place, he saw what it truly meant to need. And in that moment he knew, he could no longer stand aside. Richard stepped forward, his shoes heavy on the worn floor. The boy turned, startled, eyes narrowing in recognition. The man from the roadside. Richard looked at the nurse, then placed a black card on the desk. His voice was low, steady. "Every bill, every treatment, whatever she needs, cover it." The nurse froze, glancing between the card and the boy. Silence lingered, broken only by the uneven beep of the monitor inside the ward. The boy's face hardened, confused. "Why? Why would you do this?" he asked, pride and disbelief tangled in his voice. Richard crouched so they were eye to eye. "Because yesterday, when no one else stopped, you helped me. You gave me something I couldn't buy, time, safety, kindness. Let me return it." The boy's jaw trembled. He wanted to refuse, to hold on to the independence hardship had forced on him. But the sound of his mother's weak breaths broke through. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. By evening, his mother lay in a private room, clean sheets, proper oxygen, steady medicine dripping at her side. The boy sat beside her, his hand wrapped in hers. Richard watched from the doorway, a quiet witness to a bond money could never purchase, but could now help protect. News spread quickly through the neighborhood. Whispers rose in corners. That boy fixed his car. And now look, imagine a billionaire helping one of ours. Maybe not all rich men walk blind. In the weeks that followed, Richard did more than pay medical bills. He arranged tutors, opened doors to schools the boy had only dreamed of, and kept that stitched backpack as a reminder of where Elijah had begun. Eventually, he offered adoption, not as charity, but as partnership. "You carry the heart of an engineer," Richard said. "Let me give you the path to build what you were born to create." Months later, the world saw them together on a stage. Cameras flashed as Richard spoke at a press conference, Elijah by his side. The boy, still humble, still carrying his patched backpack, stood firm under the glaring lights. Richard faced the crowd. "Not long ago, my car broke down. I had wealth, contacts, services, and no one came. Except him. A boy with nothing to spare, who still gave everything. He reminded me that real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in courage, kindness, and choosing to act when others look away. Applause thundered across the hall. Reporters scribbled furiously. Elijah lowered his gaze, then lifted it again, calm but unshakable. And in that moment, it was no longer the story of a stranded millionaire. It was the story of a boy whose small hands repaired more than an engine. They restarted a man's humanity. The world told me wealth was power, Richard finished, but that boy showed me kindness is greater than gold. Because sometimes the poorest hands fix what money never could. Elijah's story proved that compassion can change lives in ways money never will.